Bhagavatam shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 13, entitled The Dynasty of Maharaja Nimi, text number 6. Iti utsasarcha swam deham iti utsasarja swam deham nimihi adhyatmako vidaha nimir adhyatmako vidaha mitra varunayoho jagye mitra varunayor jagye urvashyam ityutsasarja swam deham nimir adhyatmako vidaha mitra varunayor jagye urvashyam prapitamaha. Iti thus Utsasarja gave up swam his own deham body nimihi Maharaja Nimi adhyatmako vidaha fully cultural knowledge from the semen of Mitra and Varuna, discharged from seeing the beauty of Urvashi. Agne was born Urvashyam through Urvashi, a prostitute of the heavenly kingdom. Prat ends the Bhaktivedanta purport and translation to Canto 9, Chapter 13, text number 6 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna We see here that when Maharaja Nimi requested Vasishtha Muni to become the chief priest for a sacrifice which he has planned to perform to satisfy Lord Vishnu, Vasishtha Muni had agreed for another sacrifice to be performed on behalf of Indra, and because of which he could not agree to the request of Maharaja Nimi. So Maharaja Nimi had appointed some other priest and went ahead with his sacrifice. And there was no wrong on his part, but unnecessarily Vasishtha Muni became upset and even angry when he got to know that Maharaja Nimi had appointed another priest instead of him. Because Vasishtha Muni said, I will come back and perform the sacrifice for you, you please wait. So he was irked Because he thought that even after I told I will come and perform the sacrifice, why did he go ahead performing the sacrifice with some other priest? But Shukadeva Goswami explains that Maharaj Nimi thought life is very short and one cannot wait even a moment without serving Krishna, satisfying Krishna, without performing sacrifice for Krishna. So that was his thought process. He was not intending to disregard the instruction of Vasishtha, which was wrongly read by Vasishtha Muni. He wrongly understood Maharaja Nimi. Maharaja Nimi had no other thought process than just thinking, how can I wait so long till Vasishtha Muni comes back? So let me go ahead with my Krishna conscious activity. After all, it was Krishna conscious activity. It is not his sense gratification, not his personal agenda. Vasishtha Muni, being the spiritual master, should have known and should have been happy that my disciple or my student or this king is so nice that he was so alert in his spiritual execution of his duties, in his execution of his spiritual duties, that he did not wait for me. Actually, you could have taken it as a test wherein Maharaj Nimi passed. But instead of thinking like that, he erred. And instead of being quiet for the mistake which he has done, he became upset, which is not proper on the part of Vasishtha Muni. And he went on to curse Maharaj Nimi to give up his body. Now one may wonder, why did Maharaj Nimi counter curse? He could have tolerated. Actually, Vasishtha Muni's cursing is out of the mode of passion, anger. But Maharaj Nimi's cursing is not from the mode of passion or anger. It is actually proper to counter curse Vasishtha Muni. And that was Maharaj Nimi's duty, to correct the mistake which has happened. And it was good for Vasishtha Muni, because just like the Vedic saying that if somebody murders someone, then the prayashchitta is he has to give up his own body. Otherwise, the accumulation of sin will increase in the next life if the punishment is not meted out to the perpetrator immediately. So it is actually good for the murderer. He just has to give up his body, that's all. But otherwise he has to suffer more in his next life. Similarly, for the wrong cursing by Vasishtha Muni, it was good that Maharaj Nimi countercuts by telling him to give up his body, and the offense has ended there. Otherwise he may has to suffer more. So with this background, coming back to this verse, Shukadeva Goswami is saying, Nimir Adhyatma Po Vidaha. Maharaja Nimi was learned in the science of spiritual knowledge, and not only learned, Shukadeva Goswami used the word Po Vidaha. He was expert, fully conversant in spiritual knowledge. Prabhupada translates that as one who was expert in the science of spiritual knowledge. So that means those who were taking up leadership positions, the rulers, the kings, the monarchs, they were all highly educated and highly cultured. They were well trained in the science of spiritual knowledge. They were not illiterates. And they knew how to rule the citizens. They knew the importance of spiritual life, the science of spiritual knowledge, and then they have taken up the ruling. So they were not untrained Kshatriyas. Like Prabhupada said, sometime back in America, it's a draft board. By force, they were wanting all the citizens to join the army. But it proved to be a failure because they were not Kshatriyas. They are not trained to be Kshatriyas. Those who are not Kshatriyas also are forced into military force. So they cannot perform well. But this is not like that. They are all well-trained monarchs. There is systematic training in the Vedic culture. Systematic division of Varna and Ashrama, trying to understand the physiological and the psychological condition of every individual and train him accordingly. That is Varnashrama Dharma. But the surprising part in Kali Yuga is that because of the absence of Varnashrama and the predominance of Varna Sankara kind of style of life, we are not able to produce Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. So that is another sad part in Kali Yuga. That is why it is so important to follow the Varnashrama Dharma, wherein one can produce all classes of people in society for the proper upkeep of the society. Because you require all the four Varnas, all the four ashramas for the proper balance in a civilized society. Otherwise there will be an imbalance. If there are only Kshatriyas, or only Brahmanas, only Vaishyas, only Shudras, how can the society function? It's just like saying there are only lawyers in the entire society, only doctors, only engineers, only carpenters, only productive men. No, we require all classes of men. Only managing directors across the world, only CEOs across the world is not going to do the job. Only workers across the world cannot do the job for all sections of people. So that is missing in the Varnashrama, in the present day society. So the kings were highly Krishna conscious in those days because they were trained from their childhood, the Gurukula, as ideal kings. Shukadeva Goswami explains, and you see in the introduction, a summary is being given by Prabhupada. He says that here, and even in one of the later verses in the purport, he says that Maharaja Nimi and all the sons in the dynasty of Nimi, they were all great self-controlled personalities. Great self-controlled personalities. Further in the later verses, Shukadeva Goswami says that they were all, I think it's the last verse of this chapter, it says they were liberated souls, free from the dualities of material distress and happiness. They were all self-realized souls, liberated souls. So, such personalities were the kings. They were actually called Rajarishis. Among the Rajas, there were also Rajarishis who were even more special. So Maharaja Nimi is a Rajarishi, as much as Yudhishthira Maharaj, Prit Maharaj, etc. So they were highly Krishna conscious. Therefore, the only reason, if at all they would conquer other kingdoms, would be just to establish Krishna consciousness. Actually, earlier days, there was nothing like the kings declaring fight over the other subordinate kings. Only on one reasoning, they would declare a war on the other kingdom when the other king has become non-godly, has stopped following the Vedic principles, is not Krishna conscious, and is not allowing his citizens to practice Krishna consciousness. Only under this one condition they would wage a war and bring him under control and make him forcefully practice and accept Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, one cannot become a leader. As per Rishabhadev, he says that if the leader is not Krishna conscious, he cannot be a leader. That is the primary criteria of being a king. Of course, Rishabh Dev says uh, there are 6 positions, and all of them, their primary duty is to be Krishna conscious themselves. The king, the spiritual master, the devatas, mother, father, husband. So all these persons must be primarily Krishna conscious and then execute their duties and see that their subordinates also are in Krishna consciousness and practicing Krishna consciousness. Provide an environment for practicing Krishna consciousness. That is their prime responsibility. So the king's prime responsibility is to see and to facilitate Krishna consciousness among his citizens. After that comes the material arrangements, material facilities and amenities. So if the people are satisfied in simple Krishna conscious life, there will be no agitation. There will be no unrest in the society and among the citizens. This is the secret. Today, if you see so much of unrest and agitation, it's because people are dissatisfied. So what is the cause of dissatisfaction? Lack of higher values in life, lack of value for spiritual life, lack of value of the human form of life. So this education has to be imparted. What is the purpose of human life? What is the value of human life? What is the goal of human life? How to remain satisfied materially, whether material facilities are there or not there, whether material things are going fine or not to concern too much about material situation in life. If this training is being done, then they will not be agitated and dissatisfied because of some material lack of material arrangements and facilities. But today that is the unrest, that is the dissatisfaction. So the kings have to ensure that there is spiritual education being imparted to their citizens. So there are about 6 lessons which we can learn from this episode I have just listed as per my understanding. So the first thing is humility of Maharaja Nimi, what we can imbibe from this episode. The humility of Maharaja Nimi. He had the power to counteract the curse of Vasishtha Muni by his own spiritual power, spiritual tejas. But he did not do. He accepted the curse. He could have counteracted the curse, but he didn't counteract. He accepted the curse. And he even gave up his body to make true the words of Vasishtha Muni. See how much respect he had for Vasishtha Muni. Even though Vasishtha Muni is cursing him, he is bowing down to Vasishtha Muni. Okay, you have cursed me. I will accept the curse. And the result of the curse must be, I should give up my body. I will give up my body. See how much they're adherent to the Vedic principles, adhering to the Vedic principles. Chitraketu also we see another instance, the 9th canto of Bhagavatam we'll see in this very canto. He also accepted the curse of Mother Parvati and he also gave up his body. Although he also had the power to counteract the, to nullify the curse, neutralize the curse, but he didn't do. He said, my dear mother, if that is your wish, let that come true. I don't want your words to be proved false. For that sake, they're bowing down. Can you imagine the depth of surrenderance? Just for the sake that Vasishta's curse should come true, Mother Parvati's curse should come true, they're bowing their heads down. This is the height of respect, dedication, commitment, value they had for Vedic standards and principles and to the great personalities. Even if they err or commit a mistake sometimes. In a similar other situation, if not for curse as the context, we see Lord Ramachandra, another classic example in the history. He was also unnecessarily banished or told to go to forest for no mistake of his. But Lord Ramachandra silently accepted the order of his father. So, how much humble these personalities were. They were not agitated, they were not disturbed. They accepted. What mistake Maharaj Nimi did here? He only wanted to perform sacrifice for Vishnu. That's the first thing. The second thing, Maharaj Nimi was very courageous because it takes courage to give up the body. Is that easy? It takes courage to accept the curse, not getting agitated. Controlling all your senses, accept the curse, and even give up the body. It requires self-courage. He didn't lose control over his senses. The third thing which we can learn from this is how Maharaj Nimi was so detached that he was able to give up his body without any difficulty. It is so difficult to give up this body. And we know that. Practically in our experience, we are so attached to this body that the time of death is very disturbing for everyone. So disturbing. Extremely disturbing. Elsewhere, Sripad Shankaracharya describes the experience of death as biting of millions of scorpions. So painful. So it's not easy to give up the body. That's why what is the pain in giving up this body when I'm not the body? Because of our attachment to this body. The soul is not willing to give up this body. That is why he is undergoing severe pain. Otherwise, the soul is transcendental in its constitution and the body is material. They are in two different dimensions. So then why is the soul going through the pain? It is because of attachment to this body. The more one is attached to this body, more pain he undergoes in quitting this body. So we can see how well trained the monarchs were, that they were easily able to give up the body without difficulty. If we are told to give up the body, nobody wants to give up the body. Because it is so painful experience for us. Because we are in ignorance of the bodily concept of life. But there, as Shukadeva Goswami is explaining about Maharaj Nimi here, Adhyatma Kovida is expert in the science of spiritual knowledge. Gave up his body, being cursed by Vasishtha. So that means it is not that he was not detached. He developed detachment only because of this curse. No, just like the same instance in Maharaja Parikshit's life, because he was cursed by the Brahmin boy, he gave the kingdom. Do you think so? No. He was already prepared, always in the state of detachment. That is how he is able to give up without any resentment. How do you know what is the proof? Without resentment, he gave up. Resentment means without any grudge, he could give up the kingdom. Ramachandra also, he had no attachment to the position. What is the proof? Without any grudge or dissatisfaction, he could give up the kingdom and go to the forest. So this is the checkpoint there. Here we see Maharaj Nimi, he was cursed. But he countercursed, somebody may say, but he countercursed not out of tit for tat. Because Vasishtha Muni should know the mistake, he should learn what mistake he has done. That is why he cursed. So Vasishtha's, Nimi's cursing is different from Vasishtha Muni's cursing. Completely different, not the same. Vasishtha Muni's cursing is reactive. But Nimi's cursing is responsive. He has done good to Vasishtha. So Maharaj Nimi actually has always been practicing detachment. That is why at the beck and call he is able to execute immediately. It is understandable, isn't it? Just like suddenly if somebody says something, a difficult task, you cannot execute. You should have done it repeatedly. Then, because of the virtue of practicing, you can execute it easily. Anything, material or spiritual. So Hare Krishna, we are chanting all through the life. Then there is a possibility of remembering Krishna at the time of death. Just by knowing the formula to remember Krishna at the time of death, one cannot immediately change his mindset to focus on Krishna. The mind will not agree. Mind will rebel. Mind will rebel. It will not agree. It will go towards whatever its likeness is. What we have trained it to be. Suddenly it will not change overnight. It requires practice. That is why although Krishna says, remember me at the time of death, and then you will come back to me. But to do that, a whole life of practice is needed. Just like you study some operation in the classroom, you cannot go and execute immediately. It requires practice, training, guidance, supervision, so many things. So Maharaj Nimi had been practicing detachment and has mastered detachment. Now what is the proof? He's able to give the body immediately. So they were very detached. Then the fourth lesson is, for no mistake of Maharaj Nimi, still he was criticized, and further not just criticized, he was cursed also. Yet he tolerated. So this is one more quality which we can know from the life of Maharaj Nimi from this episode. Vaishnava is decorated with 6 transcendental qualities. Bhushana. What is the ornament of a Vaishnava? Yudhishthira Maharaj describes in Bhagavatam. Karunika titikshava. Titikshava karunika. Surda sarvadehinam. Ajata shatru. Shanta sadhava sadhu bhushan. So these are the 6 qualities of a Vaishnava. 6 ornaments of a Vaishnava. Supposed to be ornamented by these 6 transcendental qualities. Titikshava, tolerance. As Maharaj Nimi displayed here. He displayed great tolerance by accepting the curse, accepting the wrong criticism, wrong judgment, wrong decision, all wrong. He accepted all of them. So how much tolerance he had. Titikshava is the quality of Vaishnava. So Titikshava means tolerance. Karunika means being very merciful. You require mercy because nobody is perfect in this world. Therefore, mercy is a necessary quality which has to be cultivated. Karunika. Everybody is perfect, nobody will make mistake. Because people make mistake, there's reason to show mercy. And kindness. So Karunika, the Suhrida Sarvadehina, the devotee of the Lord, is a friend of every living being. Every living being. He has no party feelings and community feelings or caste feelings. He accepts and embraces everyone. So Prahlad Maharaj, as he said to his teachers, when Chanda and Amarka were teaching to Prahlad Maharaj, they were teaching about the concept of friend and enemy. Who are the friends and who are the enemies? Prahlad Maharaj said, I don't like this chapter what you are teaching. What is this you are teaching me? Friends and enemies? No. This is not good. I don't like this friend and enemy. Everybody is a friend. Why enemy? So he was telling the teachers. So, Surdas Sarvadehina. A Vaishnava has no enemy. Therefore, the next quality, Yudhishthira Maharaj says, is Ajata Shatru. Means for one for whom no enemy is born only. Ajataha. Shatru. Shatru means enemy. Jata means to take birth. Ajata means has not taken birth. Ajata Shatru means for one for whom enemy didn't take birth only. That means a devotee does not consider anybody as his enemy. He is a well-wisher of everyone. Then how can somebody be his enemy? If he is the well-wisher, that's what the previous point, both are linked. If he is the Suhridam Sarvadehina, As Krishna is Suridam Sarva Bhutanam, same thing here also it is said. Suridam Sarva Dehinam. Krishna is Suridam Sarva Bhutanam. He is the best well-wishing friend of every living being. That is why, whether we are a theist or an atheist, Krishna still continues to give his good counsel and he continues to maintain the jiva as Janardana. Eko bahunam yo vididati kaman. He is continuously supplying all the needs of all the living beings. Whether you surrender to the Lord, you don't surrender to the Lord, you are a devotee, not a devotee. Because he is the best well-wishing friend. It is not that you are doing good to me, reciprocally I will do good to you. Even if you do bad to me, I will still do good to you. This is Suhrit. Suhrit means there are three kinds of friends. Mitra, Bandhu, Suhrit. And the superlative kind of friend is Suhrit. Means, even if you disregard, he will still continue to regard you and provide all your needs and give all good help and support in all difficult circumstances. And that is the Lord in the heart, the Supreme Lord. So he is truly Suridam Sarva Bhutanam. And the devotee also, you can see in Prabhupada's life. Also, all advanced Vaishnavas you can see, pure devotees you can see this quality. They are a friend of every living being. They don't consider anyone as their enemy. Even if they are doing, if they be ill to them, but they will not consider them. So, then Ajata Shatru, for one for whom no enemy is born, and Shanta is very peaceful. The devotee is not agitated. We can see that in Bharatani's life. And Sadhava, he is saintly. So these are the Bhushanas of a devotee. So for no mistake of Nimi, he was being criticized and cursed also, still he tolerated. So that is the nature of this world. And we can see in the Bhagavatam, in many instances, even Pandavas, for no mistake of theirs, for no offense of theirs, constantly they were at the receiving end. They were being targeted by Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana for no mistake of theirs. Constantly they were put in trouble. Yet they tolerated. So that is how a devotee is expected to live in this world, because there will be many challenging situations and unwarranted situations. Even for no mistake, sometimes one might be criticized, but one should be ready to tolerate without losing the sense of Krishna consciousness. Considering all these things as very minor, when we have a serious task of Krishna consciousness, becoming Krishna conscious, fully Krishna conscious, we have such a serious task, so the other minor incidents should be disregarded and forgotten. We have a serious business to execute. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, Krishna is kind enough to minimize our past reactionary activities, and he is sending only a sample. Let us tolerate it and burn off the karmas than reacting to that situation. Then the fifth lesson is misuse of power. Vasishtha Muni, no doubt, he is advanced. He is a great personality, but there is misuse of power. So we should be careful to use the power. How did he misuse? By unnecessarily cursing. If you have to curse somebody, you require power. Otherwise your words will not prove anything. Similarly, if you have to bless somebody also, you require power. Otherwise it will not mean anything. So neither our blessing nor our cursing will be effective if we don't have power. So there can be material power, there can be spiritual power. By doing material tapasya, austerity, penance, following some good material principles, you can develop material power. And by following spiritual principles, you develop spiritual power. But they should be preserved only for spiritual use, not for abuse, not for misuse. You have to reinvest back again in Krishna consciousness. Whatever tapas, like rising early in the morning, chanting Hare Krishna, it's the greatest tapasya, greatest spiritual power it will endow one with. That's a fact. But we should not misuse these spiritual assets kindly given by the spiritual master. We should reinvest it back to serving Krishna, serving Guru, becoming more humble, developing our spiritual qualities, enhance our spiritual qualities. That's a gift by the Guru for our use and not for exploitation. So all these spiritual activities are very, very potent. When Ashtanga Yoga can be so much potent, and Jnana Yoga can be so much potent in purifying one's karma, how much potent is Bhakti? It's in superlative degree. So there should be no misuse of power. Of course, the good part is in Kali Yuga, people don't have even material power nor spiritual power. So, with exception of few. Therefore, even the cursing of people in Kali Yuga will not work, will not be very effective. Because they don't have tapasya, nor chastity. Or they have to follow some principles very strictly. Like Gandhari followed a material principle. Because her husband was blind, she blindfolded herself voluntarily. That's not a spiritual principle, it's a Vedic principle. It is good. But yet, because of following this one principle, how much power she derived. And we know the episode from Mahabharata that when she called her son Duryodhan one day to come naked so that she could transfer her power of chastity so accrued to him so that his body will become iron-like and he will not die. But Lord Krishna is always the benefactor of the devotees. So he said, Hare. So one early morning he was going to see his mother and said, Hare Duryodhan, where are you going? He said, no, my mother has called me, I'm going to see her. What is this? You're a grown-up boy, grown-up man, and you're going, not covering your lower part of the body. That is not good. So you have to be cultured. So then he covered his lower part of the body, then he went. And then Mother Gandhari opened her eyes. And then his entire body became iron-like, except the portion of the body which was covered by a clothing. Later on, because of that, so when Mother Gandhari recognized, then she understood, oh my God, this is the play of Krishna. So she understood, okay, you cannot change Krishna's plan. So she knew that his son is going to get defeated. So anyway, so therefore this power, even materially, is powerful, so we have to be extremely careful, otherwise one will fall down. So one should not misuse the power, but it has to be used in the proper way. Any energy, any Shakti is Krishna's property. So we cannot misuse. It is not your property, it is not your ownership, it is somebody else's given to you. So you should not misuse. The last thing is not to curse a great soul or a great personality, that too wrongly and unnecessarily. It's very, very detrimental, especially in spiritual life. Here we see he's cursing Maharaj Nimi. What is the price he had to pay? He had to give up his body for that. Can you imagine? The price he had to pay was giving up his body. Vasishtha Muni had to give up his body. In the Krishna book, Prabhupada explains this is regarding Kamsa, when he decided to persecute his devoted sister, Mother Devaki. And Vasudeva, such a saintly person. So in that context, I'm not going to the details now. So Prabhupada said, I'll just read it. The result of persecuting saintly persons is not only untimely death, but also gradually loses his beauty, fame, religious principles, and thus his promotion to higher planets is checked. Further, it diminishes all kinds of auspiciousness which is about to come to one's life. A civilization that commits sinful activities generally loses all faith in the Supreme Lord. See, sometimes we are always concerned, Prabhu, why is he not believing God? Why is he atheist? Why is he not able to have faith in God? You know why? Even he doesn't have a reason. This is the reason. A civilization that commits sinful activities generally loses faith in the Supreme Lord. There's also one more reason. If you commit an offense, and if you commit sinful activity, you will lose faith in the Supreme Lord. This is the danger. And such a godless civilization becomes the source of all calamities in human society. So these are some of the things which we can understand from this episode of Maharaj Nimi and Vasishtha. And the last thing is, whenever we come across all such kind of pastimes of cursing, counter cursing, all the things, one thing we should keep in view, even the Guru issue, as you know, we have been facing. One thing is, only as a matter of learning, we can discuss a subject about the wrongdoing of another person, or the offense, or the mistakes which somebody else is, any other jiva is committing, but not to prove oneself better than the other person, because it is risky. One should never be puffed up. Prabhupada says elsewhere in another purport, one should never be puffed up. So therefore, instead of coming from the angle of being a critic, just for the sake of safeguarding one's bhakti, we are discussing the Guru issue. Safeguarding one's bhakti, we are discussing the mistakes of Vasishtha Muni. Doesn't mean that I am greater than Vasishtha Muni. We can see sometimes Indra also making a mistake. Doesn't mean I am greater than Indra. Then we will fall down. But only as a matter of learning, we may try to deeply understand the mistake what had occurred in those instances. They are very great souls. Maybe one time, two times they have done a mistake. But just as a learning, we can understand, but not to prove or to think that one is better than the such great personalities. That is false ego, and it will cause one's fall down. So I'll stop with Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai.